Hello, good evening. Happy Friday, or whenever you find this. So, welcome. We're going to be getting into, which I think is technically the introduction of The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. And when you open into it, the title reads An Encyclopedic Outline of Masonic, Hermetic, Qabbalistic, and Rosicrucian Symbolical Philosophy. And this is the Diamond Jubilee Edition. And tonight we are getting into the intro on page 13. So we've got this picture that starts the chapter off, and it's a group of world religions. I'll show it to you. Oh, right. I had to 136. Okay, I had to get into this other program, so I'm going to have to work the focus. Let me show you this. I can't. So let's try not quite that focused up. Let's try that. That's better. Group of world religions. All right, let me get back so I can see this. Hey, Sass, welcome. Welcome, everyone. So this group of world religions says, and it's redrawn from Lenoir's La Franche Maconnerie. At the left of the plate stands Muhammad, holding aloft pages of the Quran, his left foot upon an image, which he has overthrown. Behind Muhammad, the celestial bull, signifying the constellation of Taurus, opens the egg of the year with his horns. At the lower right is a bas-relief of the Persian sun god, Mithras, in an attitude signifying the conquest of the sun over the celestial bull at the ancient vernal equinox. In the center stands the high priest of Israel, his right arm encircling the base of the seven-branched candlestick. The mosaic symbol of the planetary governors of the world. To his right is the statue of the golden calf, and to his left, the robed figures of the Greek mystics, bearing a tripod in which burns the sacrificial fire. Behind the bull, Apis, crowned with the lunar globe, and Father Nile, bearing the horn of plenty and pouring the waters of life from his urn, loom the pyramids, the great Egyptian temples of initiation. In the clouds at the left is the seated figure of Jupiter Ammon, brandishing a flaming thunderbolt, and horned to signify that he partakes of the attributes of the zodiacal ram. In the heavens appears the mystery of the apocalypse. The four creatures of Ezekiel's vision surround an altar upon which is the book of seven seals and the Lamb of God. At the upper left is the band of the zodiac. The constellations of Taurus, Aries, and Pisces represent the stellar influences which, according to the ancients, descending upon the earth, are responsible for the establishment of the religious and philosophical institutions herein set forth. Juicy. So, to the intro. Philosophy is... Oh, crap. I never pulled my microphone out. Eee. Uh-oh. Here we go. Boop. Okay. Boom, boom. Let's flip it. Osimo. All right, now intro. Philosophy is the science of estimating values. The superiority of any state or substance over another is determined by philosophy. By assigning a position of primary importance to what remains when all that is secondary has been removed, philosophy thus becomes the true index of priority or emphasis in the realm of speculative thought. The mission of philosophy, a priori, is to establish the relation of manifested things to their invisible ultimate cause or nature. Philosophy, writes Sir William Hamilton, quote, has been defined as the science of things divine and human, and of the causes in which they are contained, that's Cicero, the science of effects by their causes, Hobbes, the science of sufficient reasons, Leibniz, the science of things possible inasmuch as they are possible, Wolff, the science of things evidently deduced from first principles, Descartes, the science of truths, sensible and abstract, de Condillac, Condillac, the application of reasons to its legitimate objects, Tennemann, the science of the relations of all knowledge to the necessary ends of human reasons, Kant. Ooh, Immanuel Kant. I was born on the same day as him, in a different year. The science of the original form of the ego or mental self, Krug. The science of sciences, Fichte. The science of the absolute, von Schelling. The science of the absolute difference of the ideal and real, von Schelling. Or the identity of identity and non-identity, Hegel, end quote. See lectures on metaphysics and logic, in parentheses. The 6 headings under which the disciplines of philosophy are commonly classified are metaphysics, which deals with the abstract subjects of cosmology, theology, and the nature of being; logic, which deals with the laws governing rational thinking, or, as it has been called, the doctrine of fallacies; ethics, which is the science of morality, individual responsibility, and character, concerned chiefly with an effort to determine the nature of good; psychology, which is devoted to investigation and classification of those forms of phenomena referable to a mental origin; epistemology, which is the science concerned primarily with the nature of knowledge itself and the question of whether it may exist in an absolute form; and aesthetics, which is the science of the nature of and the reactions awakened by the beautiful, the harmonious, the elegant, and the noble. Plato regarded philosophy as the greatest good ever imparted by divinity to man. In the 20th century, however, it has become a ponderous and complicated structure of arbitrary and irreconcilable notions, yet each substantiated by almost incongestible logic. The lofty theorems of the old academy, which Iamblichus likened to the nectar and ambrosia of the gods, have been so adulterated by opinion, which Heraclitus declared to be a falling sickness of the mind, that the heavenly mead would now be quite unrecognizable to this great Neoplatonist. Convincing evidence of the increasing superficiality of modern scientific and philosophic thought is its persistent drift towards materialism. When the great astronomer Laplace was asked by Napoleon why he had not mentioned God in his Traité de la Mécanique Céleste, the mathematician naively replied, "Sire, I had no need for that hypothesis." In his treatise on atheism, Sir Francis Bacon tersely summarizes the situation thus, quote, "A little philosophy inclineth man's mind to atheism, but depth in philosophy bringeth man's mind about to religion," end quote. The metaphysics of Aristotle opens with these words: "All men naturally desire to know." To satisfy this common urge, the unfolding human intellect has explored the extremities of imaginable space without and the extremities of imaginable self within, seeking to estimate the relationship between the one and the all, the effect and the cause, nature and the groundwork of nature, the mind and the source of the mind, the spirit and the substance of the spirit, the illusion and the reality. The ancient philosopher once said, quote, "He who has not even a knowledge of common things is a brute among men. He who has an accurate knowledge of human concerns alone is a man among brutes. But he who knows all that can be known by intellectual energy is a god among men." End quote. Man's status in the natural world is determined, therefore, by the quality of his thinking. He whose mind is enslaved to his bestial instincts and philosophically not superior to the brute is philosophically not superior to the brute. He whose rational faculties ponder human affairs is a man, and he whose intellect is elevated to the consideration of divine realities is already a demigod, for his being partakes of the luminosity with which his reason has brought him into proximity. In his encomium of the science of sciences, Cicero is led to exclaim, quote, "O philosophy, life's guide, O seeker out of virtue and expeller of vices, what could we in every age of men have been without thee? Thou hast produced cities, thou hast called men scattered about into the social enjoyment of life." End quote. In this age, the word philosophy has little meaning unless accompanied by some other qualifying term. The body of philosophy has been broken up into numerous isms, more or less antagonistic, which have become so concerned with the effort to disprove each other's fallacies that the sublimer issue of divine order and human destiny have suffered deplorable neglect. The ideal function of philosophy is to serve as the stabilizing influence in human thought. By virtue of its intrinsic nature, it should prevent man from ever establishing unreasonable codes of life. Philosophers themselves, however, have frustrated the end of philosophy by exceeding in their wool gathering those untrained minds whom they are supposed to lead in the straight and narrow path of rational thinking. To list and classify any but the more important of the now recognized schools of philosophy is beyond the space limitations of this volume. The vast area of speculation covered by philosophy will be appreciated best after a brief consideration of a few of the outstanding systems of philosophic discipline which have swayed the world of thought during the last 26 centuries. The Greek school of philosophy had its inception with the 7 immortalized thinkers upon whom was first conferred the appellation of Sophos, the wise. According to Diogenes Laertius, these were Thales, Solon, Chilon, Pittacus, Bias, Cleobulus, and Periander. Water was conceived by Thales to be the primary principle or element, upon which the earth floated like a ship, and earthquakes were the result of disturbances in this universal sea. Since Thales was Ionian, the school perpetuating his tenets became known as the Ionic. Ion. I want to go to Iona a lot. He died in 546 BC and was succeeded by Anaximander. That's a cool name. Anaximander. Anaximander, who in turn was followed by Anaximenes, Anaxagoras, and Archelaus, Archelaus, with whom the Ionic school ended. Anaximander, differing from his master Thales, declared measureless and indefinable infinity to be the principle from which all things were generated. Anaximenes asserted air to be the first element of the universe, that souls and even the deity itself were composed of it. So before I turn this page, there's a black and white picture in here. Negative, the thermospiral. And there's a bunch of spirals here, and it looks like a heart. Negative end, positive end, vortex, torrent, from Babbitt's principles of light and color. Babbitt's atom. Okay. Oh, wow. Did I just leave? Ah! Okay, I got there. I did. I just left it on the other. That's okay. So I'll hold this up, and I bet I can make this one all the way zoomy in here because I'll have to hold it. I can hold this one closer. Boop. Almost. Why gotta be so sensitive? Oh my gosh. This is close enough. Okay. So it says, oops. Since the postulation of the atomic theory by Democritus, many efforts have been made to determine the structure of atoms and the method by which they unite to form various elements. Even science has not refrained from entering this field of speculation and presents for consideration most detailed and elaborate representations of these minute bodies. By far the most remarkable conception of the atom evolved during the last century is that produced by the genius of Dr. Edwin D. Babbitt, and which is reproduced herewith. The diagram is self-explanatory. It must be borne in mind that this apparently massive structure is actually so minute as to defy analysis. Not only did Dr. Babbitt create this form of them, but he also contrived a method whereby these particles could be grouped together in an orderly manner and thus result in the formation of molecular bodies. Anaxagoras, whose doctrine savors of atomism, held God to be, quote, an infinite self-living mind, that this divine infinite mind, not enclosed by any body, is the efficient cause of all things out of the infinite matter consisting of similar parts, everything being made according to its species by the divine mind, who, when all things were at first confusedly mingled together, came and reduced them to order. End quote. Archelaus declared the principle of all things to be twofold: mind, which was incorporeal, and air, which was corporeal. The rarefaction and condensation of the latter resulting in fire and water, respectively. The stars were conceived by Archelaus to be burning iron plates. Heraclitus, who lived 536 to 470 BC and is sometimes included in the Ionic school, is his doctrine of change and external flux asserted fire to be the first element and also the state into which the world would ultimately be reabsorbed. The soul of the world he regarded as an exhalation from its humid parts, and he declared the ebb and flow of the sea to be caused by the sun. After Pythagoras of, how do you say it, Samos, its founder, the Italic or Pythagorean school numbers among its most distinguished representatives Empedocles, Epit. Oh man, is it Epicharmus? Epicar, Epicharmus. Epicharmus, Archytas, Alcmaeon, Hippasus, Philolaus, and Exodus. Pythagoras, 580 to 500 BC, conceived mathematics to be the most sacred and exact of all the sciences, and demanded of all who came to him for study a familiarity with arithmetic, music, astronomy, and geometry. He laid special emphasis upon the philosophic life as a prerequisite to wisdom. Pythagoras was one of the first teachers to establish a community wherein all the members were of mutual assistance to one another in the common attainment of the higher sciences. He also introduced the discipline of retrospection as essential to the development of the spiritual mind. Pythagoreanism may be summarized as a system of metaphysical speculation concerning the relationships between numbers and the causal agencies of existence. This school also first expounded the theory of celestial harmonics, or the music of the spheres. John Reuchlin said of Pythagoras that he taught nothing to his disciples before the discipline of silence, silence being the first rudiment of contemplation. In his Sophist, Aristotle credits Empedocles with the discovery of rhetoric. Both Pythagoras and Empedocles accepted the theory of transmigration, the latter saying, quote, "A boy I was, then did a maid become, a plant, bird, fish, and in the vast sea swum," end quote. Archytas, which is Archytas. Hey, Steve, in. Awesome. Awesome. I hope bowling was great. Wonderful. Archytas is credited with invention of the screw and the crane. Pleasure he declared to be a pestilence because it was opposed to the temperament of the mind. He considered a man without doubt to be as rare as a fish without bones. The Eleatic sect, which is Eleatic, the Eleatic sect was founded by Xenophanes, 570 to 480 BC, who was conspicuous for his attacks upon the cosmologic and theogonic. Theogonic, I gotta look that up. Everything's so close. I'll figure it out. Oh, yeah, man. I do too. Thanks, though. I appreciate you saying that. I struggle with those names. Okay, so yeah. Oh, crap. Balls. I remember where I am in here. Philosophical. Okay. Eleatic sect. Xenophanes. Oh, yeah. Cosmologic and theogonic. Hey, Code, welcome in. Happy Friday. Theogonic. We're going to look it up. I already have a new tab. Okay. Theogonic definition. Theogony. Theogonic. Is that how you say it? Well, what does it mean? An account of the origin and descent of the gods. I love it. Theogony. Theogonic. Theogonic. An account of the origin and descent of the gods. That's so cool. Mary, awesome to see you. Happy Friday. Welcome, everyone. Awesome. Oh, I send my love to Chrissy too. Thank you. I love you all. Shoot, I told her I was going to blow her phone up this week and I hadn't. It's Friday. Pulse. Okay. So the Eleatics was founded by Xenophanes, 570 to 480 BC, who was conspicuous for his attacks upon the cosmologic and theogonic fables of Homer and Hesiod. Right? Hesiod? I think. Xenophanes declared that God was one, or quote, one and incorporeal, in substance and figure round, no way resembling man, that he is all sight and all hearing, but breathes not, that he is all things, the mind and wisdom, not generate, but eternal, impassible, immutable, and rational, end quote. Xenophanes believed that all existing things were eternal, that the world was without beginning or end, and that everything which was generated was subject to corruption. He lived to great age and is said to have made his sons with his own hands. Parmenides studied under Xenophanes, but never entirely subscribed to his doctrines. Parmenides declared the senses to be uncertain and reason the only criterion of truth. He first asserted the earth to be round and also divided its surface into zones of heat and cold. Melissus, who is inclined in the Eleatic school, held many opinions in common with I just said it. Many opinions in common with Parmenides. He declared the universe to be immovable because, occupying all space, there was no place to which it could be moved. He further rejected the theory of vacuum in space. Zeno of Elea also maintained that a vacuum could not exist. Rejecting the theory of motion, he asserted that there was but one God who was an eternal, ungenerated being. Like Xenophanes, he conceived deity to be spherical in shape. Leucippus held the universe to consist of two parts, one full and the other a vacuum. From the infinite, a host of minute fragmentary bodies descended into the vacuum, where, through continual agitation, they organized themselves into spheres of substance. The great Democritus, to a certain degree, enlarged upon the atomic theory of Leucippus. Democritus declared the principles of all things to be twofold, atoms and vacuum. Both, he asserted, are infinite, atoms in number, vacuum in magnitude. Thus, all bodies must be composed of atoms or vacuum. Atoms possessed two properties, form and size, both characterized by infinite variety. The sole Democritus also conceived to be atomic in structure and subject to dissolution with the body. The mind he believed to be composed of spiritual atoms. Aristotle intimates that Democritus obtained his atomic theory from the Pythagorean doctrine of the monad. Among the Eleatics are also included Pythagoras and Anax. I just said it to you. Anaxarchus. Anna balls. Anaxarchus. 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 All right. Socrates, 469 to 399 BC, the founder of the Socratic sect, being fundamentally a skeptic, did not force his opinions upon others, but thought the medium of questionings caused each man to give expression to his own philosophy. According to Plutarch, Socrates conceived every place as appropriate for teaching, in that the whole world was a school of virtue. He held that the soul existed before the body, and, prior to immersion therein, was endowed with all knowledge, that when the soul entered into the material form, it became stupefied, but that by discourses upon sensible objects, it was caused to reawaken and to recover its original knowledge. On these premises was based his attempt to stimulate the soul power through irony and inductive reasoning. It has been said of Socrates that the sole subject of his philosophy was man. He himself declared philosophy to be the way of true happiness, and its purpose twofold: one, to contemplate God, and two, to abstract the soul from corporeal sense. Chrissy, I love you. Welcome. I am proud of you, my girl. Way to go. Way to go. I freed myself from a dude this week too. Way to go. Freaking awesome. One day at a time, one moment at a time. I love you. Okay. The principles of all things he conceived to be three in number: God, matter, and ideas. Of God he said, quote, "What he is, I know not. What he is not, I know." End quote. Matter he defined as the subject of generation and corruption, idea as an incorruptible substance, the intellect of God. Wisdom he considered the sum of the virtues. Among the prominent members of the Socratic sect were Xenophon, Aeschines, Crito, Simon, Glauco, Simmias, and Cebes. Professor Zeller, the great authority on ancient philosophies, has recently declared the writings of Xenophon related to Socrates to be forgeries. When The Clouds of Aristophanes, a comedy written to ridicule the theories of Socrates, was first presented, the great skeptic himself attended the play. During the performance, which caricatured him seated in a basket high in the air studying the sun, Socrates rose calmly in his seat, the better to enable the Athenian spectators to compare his own unprepossessing with the grotesque mask worn by the actor impersonating him. Oh, to live in those times, right? The Elean sect was founded by Phaedo of Elis, a youth of noble family who was brought from slavery at the instigation of Socrates and who became his devoted disciple. Plato so highly admired Phaedo's mentality that he named one of the most famous of his discourses the Phaedo. Phaedo was succeeded in his school by Plisthenes, who in turn was followed by Menedemus. Of the doctrines of the Elean sect, little is known. Menedemus is presumed to have been inclined toward the teachings of Stilpo and the Megarian sect. When Menedemus's opinions were demanded, he answered that he was free, thus intimidating that most men were enslaved to their opinions. Menedemus was apparently of a somewhat belligerent temperament and often returned from his lectures in a badly bruised condition. The most famous of his propositions is stated thus: that which is not the same is different from that which it is not the same. This point being admitted, Menedemus continued, to benefit is not the same as good. Therefore, good does not benefit. After the time of Menedemus, the Elean sect became known as the Eretrian, Eretrian, Eretrian. Its exponents denounced all negative propositions and all complex and abstruse theories, declaring that only affirmative and simple doctrines could be true. The Megarian sect was founded by Euclid of Megara, not the celebrated mathematician, a great admirer of Socrates. The Athenians passed a law decreeing death to any citizen of Megara found in the city of Athens. Nothing daunted, Euclid donned woman's clothing and went at night to study with Socrates. After the cruel death of their teacher, the disciples of Socrates, fearing a similar fate, fled to Megara, where they were entertained with great honor by Euclid. The Megarian school accepted the Socratic doctrine that virtue is wisdom, adding to it the Eleatic concept that goodness is absolute unity and all change an illusion of the senses. Euclid maintained that God has no opposite and therefore evil does not exist. Being asked about the nature of the gods, he declared himself ignorant of their disposition, save that they hated curious persons. Right? I love you, Mary. The Megarians are occasionally included among the dialectic philosophers. Euclid, who died 374 BC, was succeeded in his school by Eubulides, 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 among whose disciples were Alexinus and Apollonius. Alexinus and Apollonius. Cronus. Euphantus, who lived to great age and wrote many tragedies, was among the foremost followers of Eubulides. Diodorus is usually included in the Megarian school, having heard Eubulides lecture. According to legend, Diodorus died of grief because he could not answer instantly certain questions asked him by Stilpo, one time master of the Megarian school. Diodorus held that nothing can be moved, since to be moved it must be taken out of the place in which it is and put into a place where it is not, which is impossible because all things must always be in the place where they are. The Cynics were a sect founded by Antisthenes, Antisthenes of Athens, and that's Antisthenes. Antisthenes, maybe. Antisthenes of Athens, 444 to 356 BC, a disciple of Socrates. Their doctrine may be described as an extreme individualism which considers man as existing for himself alone and advocates surrounding him by inharmony, suffering, and direst need that he may thereby be driven to retire more completely into his own nature. The Cynics renounced all worldly possessions, living in the rudest shelters and subsisting upon the coarsest and simplest food. On the assumption that the gods wanted nothing, the Cynics affirmed that those whose needs were fewest consequently approached closest to the divinities. Being asked what he gained by a life of philosophy, Antisthenes replied that he had learned how to converse with himself. Diogenes of Sinopus is remembered chiefly for the tub in the Metrorum. Is 2 lines. Metroum, Metroum, which is capitalized. The tub in the Metroum, which for many years served him as a home. The people of Athens loved the beggar philosopher, and when a youth in jest bored holes in the tub, the city presented Diogenes with a new one and punished the youth. Diogenes believed that nothing in life can be rightly accomplished without exercitation. Theogony, an account. An account of the origin and descent of the gods. Pause. Why do I get lost so fast? Mother of pearls. Exercitation. Exercitation. Exercise. Exercitation. Exercise. Cool. Diogenes believed that nothing in life can be really accomplished without exercitation. He maintained that everything in the world belongs to the wise, a declaration which he proved by the following logic. Quote, all things belong to the gods. The gods are friends to wise persons. All things are common amongst friends. Therefore, all things belong to the wise. End quote. Among the Cynics are Mononymous, Onesicritus, Crates, or Straits, Crates, Metrocles, 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 Hipparchia, who married Crate, Menippus, and Menedemus. The Cyrenaic sect, which is Cyrenaic, the Cyrenaic sect, founded by Aristippus of Cyrene, 435 to 356 BC, promulgated the doctrine of hedonism. Learning of the fame of Socrates, Aristippus journeyed to Athens and applied himself to the teachings of the great skeptic. Socrates, pained by the voluptuous and mercenary tendencies of Aristippus, vainly labored to reform the young man. Aristippus had the distinction of being consistent in principle and practice, for he lived in perfect harmony with his philosophy that the quest of pleasure was the chief purpose of life. The doctrines of the Cyrenians, Cyrenaics may be summarized thus. Cyrenaics summarized thus. All that is actually known concerning any object or condition is the feeling which it awakens in man's own nature. In the sphere of ethics, that which awakens the most pleasant feeling is consequently to be esteemed as the greatest good. Emotional reactions are classified as pleasant or gentle, harsh and mean. The end of pleasant emotion is pleasure. The end of harsh emotion, grief. The end of mean emotion, nothing. Oh, there's a picture over here too of Platon from Thomason's Recul des Figures groups, thermes, fountains, vases et autres ornaments. Plato. Plato's real name was Aristocles. 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 When his father brought him to study with Socrates, Lees, the great skeptic declared that on the previous night he had dreamed of a white swan, which was an omen that his new disciple was to become one of the world's illuminated. There is a tradition that the immortal Plato was sold as a slave by the king of Sicily. And this is a picture of Platon. Hey, welcome in, super conscious explorers. Okay, 1 through 6, but let's do it like this. And then the next picture we're going to visit is this trippy illusionistic looking thing. And that picture says the problem of diversity from Kircher's Ars Magna Siendi. In the above diagram, Kircher arranges 18 objects in 2 vertical columns and then determines the number of arrangements in which they can be combined. By the same method, Kircher further estimates that 50 objects may be arranged in, oh shit, this huge number. It's insane. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67. 67 numbers in that one number I don't know how to say. That many combinations. Wow. From this, it will be evident that infinite diversity is possible, for the countless parts of the universe may be related to each other in an incalculable number of ways. And through the various combination of these limitless subdivisions of being, infinite individuality and infinite variety must inevitably result. Thus, it is further evident that life can never become monotonous or exhaust the possibilities of variety. I love that. Hey, welcome, Para. Good to see you. Good to meet you. Awesome. I hope you have a wonderful evening walk. So, where am I in here now? Nothing. That's where I said last. Okay. Through mental perversity, some men do not desire pleasure. In reality, however, pleasure, especially of a physical nature, is the true end of existence and exceeds in every way mental and spiritual enjoyments. Pleasure, furthermore, is limited wholly to the moment. Now is the only time. The past cannot be regarded without regret, and the future cannot be feared, or rather faced, without misgiving. Therefore, neither is conducive to pleasure. No man should grieve, for grief is the most serious of all diseases. Nature permits man to do anything he desires. He is limited only by his own customs. A philosopher is one free from envy, love, and superstition, and whose days are one long round of pleasure. Indulgence was thus elevated by Aristippus, I'm not sure which way, right? To the chief position among the virtues. He further declared philosophers to differ markedly from other men in that they alone would not change the order of their lives if all the laws of men were abolished. Among prominent philosophers influenced by the Cyrenaic doctrines were Hegesias, Anaxagoras, Theodorus, and Bion. The sect of the academic philosophers instituted by Plato, 427 to 347 BC, was divided into three major parts: the Old, the Middle, and the New Academy. Among the old academics were Spwensippus, Xenotes, Pullman, Crates, and Crantor. Arcesilaus instituted the Middle Academy, and Carneades founded the New. Chief among the masters of Plato was Socrates. Plato traveled widely and was initiated by the Egyptians into the profundities of Hermetic philosophy. He also derived much from the doctrines of the Pythagoreans. Cicero described the threefold constitution of Platonic philosophy as comprising ethics, physics, and dialectics. Plato defined good as threefold in character: good in the soul, expressed through the virtues; good in the body, expressed through the symmetry and endurance of the parts; and good in the external world, expressed through social position and companionship. In the book of Speusippus, the book of Speusippus on Platonic definitions, that great Platonist thus defines God, quote, a being that lives immortally by means of himself alone, sufficing for his own blessedness, the eternal essence, cause of his own goodness, end quote. According to Plato, the one is the term most suitable for defining the absolute, since the whole precedes the parts and diversity is dependent on unity, but unity not on diversity. The one, moreover, is before being, for to be is an attribute or condition of the one. Platonic philosophy is based upon the postulation of three orders of being: that which moves unmoved, that is self-moved, and that which is moved. That which is immovable but moves is anterior to that which is self-moved, which likewise is anterior to that which it moves. That in which motion is inherent cannot be separated from its motive power. It is therefore incapable of dissolution. Of such nature are the immortals. That which has motion imparted to it from another can be separated from the source of its animating principle. It is therefore subject to dissolution. Of such nature are mortal beings. Superior to both the mortals and the immortals is that condition which continually moves, yet itself is unmoved. To this constitution, the power of abidance is inherent. It is therefore the divine permanence upon which all things are established. Being nobler even than self-motion, the unmoved mover is the first of all dignities. The Platonic disciple was founded upon the theory that learning is really reminiscence, or the bringing into objectivity of knowledge formerly acquired by the soul in a previous state of existence. At the entrance of the Platonic school in the academy were written the words, quote, "Let none ignorant of geometry enter here," end quote. After the death of Plato, his disciples separated into two groups. One, the academics, continued to meet in the academy where once he had presided. The other, the Peripatetics, Peripatetics, the Peripatetics, removed to the Lyceum under the leadership of Aristotle, 384 to 322 BC. Code, weren't you just talking about that number? Or was it 233? Plato recognized Aristotle as his greatest disciple, and according to Philoponus, referred to him as the mind of the school. If Aristotle were absent from the lectures, Plato would say, "The intellect is not here." Of prodigious genius of Aristotle, Thomas Taylor writes in his introduction to the Metaphysics, quote, "When we consider that he was not only well acquainted with every science, as his works abundantly evidence, but that he wrote on almost every subject which is comprehended in the circle of human knowledge, and this with matchless accuracy and skill, we know not which to admire most, the penetration or extent of his mind," end quote. Okay. Maybe I just hold it up a little bit. Of the philosophy of Aristotle, the same author says, quote, "The end of Aristotle's moral philosophy is perfection through the virtues, and the end of his contemplative philosophy and union with the one principle of all things," end quote. Aristotle conceived philosophy to be twofold, practical and theoretical. Practical philosophy embraces ethics and politics. Theoretical philosophy, physics and logic. Metaphysics he considered to be the science concerning that substance which has the principle of motion and rest inherent to itself. To Aristotle, the soul is that by which man first lives, feels, and understands. Hence, to the soul, he assigned 3 faculties: nutritive, sensitive, and intellective. He further considered the soul to be twofold, rational and irrational, and in some particulars elevated the sense perceptions above the mind. Aristotle defined wisdom as the science of first causes. The 4 major decisions of his philosophy are dialectics, physics, ethics, and metaphysics. God is defined as the first mover, the best of beings, an immovable substance separate from sensible things, void of corporeal quantity, without parts and indivisible. Platonism is based upon a priori reasoning. Aristotelianism, cool, Aristotelianism upon a posteriori, posteriori, which I guess means after, because a priori, a posteriori reasoning. Aristotle taught his pupil, Alexander the Great, to feel that if he had not done a good deed, he had not reigned that day. Among his followers were Theophrastus, Strato, Lyco, Aristo, Critolaus, and Diodorus. Of skepticism, as propounded by Pyrrho of Elias, 365 to 275 BC, and by Timon, Sextus Empiricus said that those who seek must find, or deny they have found, or can find, or preserve in the inquiry. Those who suppose they have found truth are called dogmatists. So those who propose they have found truth are called dogmatists. Those who think it incomprehensible are the academics. Those who still seek are the skeptics. The attitude of skepticism toward the knowledgeable is summed up by Sextus Empiricus in the following words, quote, "But the chief ground of skepticism is that to every reason there is an opposite reason equivalent, which makes us forbear to dogmatize." End quote. The skeptics were strongly opposed to the dogmatists and were agnostic in that they held the accepted theories regarding deity to be self-contradictory and undemonstrable. How, asked the skeptic, can we have indubitate knowledge of God, knowing not his substance, form, or place? For while philosophers disagree irreconcilably on these points, their conclusions cannot be considered as undoubtedly true. So wait, there was a word in here. Indubitate. Can we have indubitate knowledge of God? Indubitate. No, not indubitable. Indubitate. Okay, Webster Merriam, you're failing me. Let's try just Google. Indubitate. Oh, this book. Okay, back on track. Boop. No, just indubitate. Indubitate definition. Is it indubitably? Indubitate, comparative, more. Indubitate, superlative, most. Indubitate, not questioned or doubtful, evident, certain. Okay, cool. Indubitate. So yeah, it is indubitably, right? Okay, so how can we have indubitate knowledge of God, knowing not his substance, form, or place? For while philosophers disagree irreconcilably on these points, their conclusions cannot be considered as undoubtedly true. And that's a question. Since absolute knowledge was considered unattainable, the skeptics declared the end of their disciple to be, quote, in opinionatives, disturbance, and impulsives, moderation, and in disquietives, suspension, end quote. In opinionatives, in disturbance, in impulsives, moderation, and in disquietives, suspension. The sect of the Stoics was founded by Zeno, 340 to 256 BC. The Cydian, who studied under Crates, the Cynic, from which sect the Stoics had their origin. Okay, founded by Zeno. Zeno was succeeded by Cleanthes, Chrysippus, Zeno of Tarsus, Diogenes, Antipater, Panatius, and Posidonius. Most famous of the Roman Stoics are Epictetus and Marcus. Oh, and Marcus Aurelius? I love his writings. The Stoics were essentially pantheists, since they maintained that as there is nothing better than the world is God. Zeno declared that the reason of the world is diffused throughout it as a seed. Stoicism is a materialistic philosophy, enjoining voluntary resignation to natural law. Chrysippus maintained that good and evil being contrary, both are necessary since each sustains the other. The soul was regarded as a body disturbed, or rather, the soul was regarded as a body distributed throughout the physical form and subject to dissolution with it. Though some of the Stoics held that wisdom prolonged the existence of the soul, actual immortality is not included in their tenets. The soul was said to be composed of 8 parts: the 5 senses, the generative power, the vocal power, and an 8th, or hegemonic part. Ooh, hegemonic. Nature was defined as God mixed throughout the substance of the world. All things were looked upon as bodies, either corporeal or incorporeal. Hegemonic, Hegemonic. Let's find out. Ruling or dominant in a political or social context. Okay. Hegemonic. Hegemonic. Oops. Hegemonic. ruling or dominant in a political or social context. Hegemonic. Cool. And an eighth, or hegemonic part. Meekness marked the attitude of the Stoic philosopher. While Diogenes was delivering a discourse against anger, one of his listeners spat contemptuously in his face. Receiving the insult with humility, the great Stoic was moved to retort, "I am not angry, but am in doubt whether I ought to be so or not." Epicurus of Samos. Let's find out how to say that word. It's a place that's famous. Samos. Not definition, but pronunciation. Samos. Cool. Of Samos. Boom. And things. I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but we got Samos now. Epicurus of Samos, 341 to 270 BC, was the founder of the Epicurean sect, which in many respects resembles the Cyrenaic, but is higher in its ethical standards. The Epicureans also posited pleasure the most desirable state, but conceived it to be a grave and dignified state, achieved through renunciation of those mental and emotional inconsistencies which are productive of pain and sorrow. Epicurus held that as the pains of the mind and soul are more grievous than those of the body, so the joys of the mind and the soul exceed those of the body. The Cyrenaics asserted pleasure to be dependent upon action or motion. The Epicureans claimed rest or lack of action to be equally productive of pleasure. Epicurus accepted the philosophy of Democritus concerning the nature of atoms and based his physics upon this theory. The Epicurean philosophy may be summed up in 4 canons. 1. Sense is never deceived, and therefore every sensation and every perception of an appearance is true. 2. Opinion follows upon sense and is superadded to sensation. I don't know what that word means, unless it just means like super and added. Okay, superadded. Opinion follows upon sense and is superadded to sensation and capable of truth or falsehood. Superadded. Yeah, added to what has already been added. Cool. Superadded. Cool. Okay. Superadded. Are we on 3? Okay, 3. All opinions attested or not contradicted by the evidence of sense is true. 4. An opinion contradicted or not attested by the evidence of sense is false. Among the Epicureans of note were Metrodorus of Lampsacus, Zeno of Sidon, and Phaedrus. Eclecticism may be defined as the practice of choosing apparently irreconcilable doctrines from antagonistic schools and constructing therefrom a composite philosophic system in harmony with the convictions of the elect himself. Eclecticism can scarcely be considered philosophically or logically sound, For as individual schools arrive at their conclusions by different methods of reasoning, so the philosophic product of fragments from these schools must necessarily be built upon the foundation of conflicting premises. Eclecticism, accordingly, has been designed, or rather, has been designated the layman's cult. In the Roman Empire, little thought was devoted to philosophic theory. Consequently, most of its thinkers were of the elect type, or rather, the eclectic type. Oh, this is eclecticism? Eclecticism, not electicism. So eclecticism, Eclecticism, eclecticism. That changes everything. Eclecticism, accordingly, has been designated the layman's cult. In the Roman Empire, little thought was devoted to philosophic theory. Consequently, most of its thinkers were of the eclectic type. Cicero is the outstanding example of early eclecticism, for his writings are a veritable potpourri of invaluable fragments from earlier schools of thought. Eclecticism appears to have its inception at the moment when men first doubted the possibility of discovering ultimate truth. Observing all so-called knowledge to be mere opinion at best, the less studious furthermore concluded that the wiser course to pursue was to accept that which appeared to be the most reasonable of the teachings of any school or individual. From this practice, however, arose a pseudo broad-mindedness, devoid of the element of preciseness found in true logic and philosophy. The Neo-Pythagorean school flourished in Alexandria during the first century of the Christian era. Only two names stand out in connection with it: Apollonius of Tyana and Moderatus of Gades. Neo-Pythagoreanism is a link between the older pagan philosophies and Neo-Platonism. Like the former, it contained many exact elements of thought derived from Pythagoras and Plato. Like the latter, it emphasized metaphysical speculation and aesthetic habits. A striking similarity has been observed by several authors between Neo-Pythagoreanism and the doctrines of the Essenes. Special emphasis was laid upon the mystery of numbers, and it is possible that the Neo-Pythagoreans had a far wider knowledge of the true teachings of Pythagoras than is available today. Even in the first century, Pythagoras was regarded more as a god than a man, and the revival of his philosophy was resorted to apparently in the hope that his name would stimulate interest in the deeper systems of learning. But Greek philosophy had passed the zenith of its splendor. The mass of humanity was awakening to the importance of physical life and physical phenomena. The emphasis upon earthly affairs, which began to assert itself, later reached maturity of expression in 20th century materialism and commercialism, even though Neoplatonism was to intervene, and many centuries passed before this emphasis took definite form. Although, oh wait, there's a picture over here. We'll do both the pictures. Aeneas at the Gate of Hell, Aeneas, Aeneas at the Gate of Hell, from Virgil's Aeneid, Dryden's translation. Interesting. And then this one is the Ptolemaic scheme of the universe. From an old print, courtesy of Carl Oscar Borg. B-O-R-G. Okay. Let me get focused. Boom. Okay, so this is the first one. Aeneas at the Gate of Hell. And then over here, this is the Ptolemaic scheme of the universe. Boom. boop. Okay. Shoot, I know, right? So close to the end of that, but 1 hour and 20 minutes, 11:20. I'm going to call it here real soon. That's why I did this one in parts, because I don't think we're going to make it through all the chapters. Okay, so where am I? These pictures. So, Aeneas at the gate of hell. Virgil describes part of the ritual of a Greek mystery, possibly the Eleusinian, 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 in his account of the descent of Aeneas to the gate of hell under the guidance of the Sibyl. Of that part of the ritual portrayed above, the immortal poet writes, full in the midst of his infernal road, an elm displays her dusky arms abroad. The god of sleep there hides his heavy head, and empty dreams on every leaf are spread. Of various forms, unnumbered spectres more, centaurs and double shapes, besiege the door. Before the passage, horrid Hydra stands, and Briareus with all his 100 hands. Gorgons, Geryon with his triple frame, and vain Chimera vomits empty flame. The chief unsheathed his shining steel prepared, though seized with sudden fear to force the guard. Off ring his brandished weapon at their face, had not the Sibyl stopped his eager pace, and told him what those empty phantoms were, forms without bodies, and impassive air. Wow. Dreams. I've been thinking about dreams a lot too. And then this picture, the Ptolemaic scheme of the universe. In ridiculing the geocentric system of astronomy expounded by Claudius Ptolemy, modern astronomers have overlooked the philosophic key to the Ptolemaic system. The universe of Ptolemy is a diagrammatic representation of relationships existing between the various divine and elemental parts of every creature, and is not concerned with astronomy as that science is now comprehended. In the above figure, special attention is called to the 3 circles of zodiacs surrounding the orbits of the planets. These zodiacs represent the threefold spiritual constitution of the universe. The orbits of the planets are the governors of the world, and the 4 elemental spheres in the center represent the physical constitution of both man and the universe. Ptolemy's scheme of the universe is simply a cross-section of the universal aura, the planets and elements to which he refers having no relation to those recognized by modern astronomers. Dude, Ptolemies are so cool! They're so cool! Man, wouldn't it be cool? I wonder how many people have Ptolemy blood still. Okay, so where am I on this? Nope, that's the name I haven't read yet. Eclecticism. Okay, I'm going to finish out this page, and then we're going to start on page 17 next time. Okay? So I think, arose a pseudo-broad-mindedness devoid of the element of preciseness found in true logic and philosophy. The Neo-Pythagorean school flourished in Alexandria during the 1st century of the Christian era. Wait, did I read that already? Only the 2 names stand out in connection with it. Apollonius of, I did read that. Even though Neoplatonism was to intervene, and many centuries pass before this emphasis took definite form. Yeah, that's where I'm calling it, everyone. It's going to be the end right here. I'm going to start right at this first paragraph on page 17 next time. 12549, it says. So yeah, thanks for hanging out. What juicy info. I didn't comprehend everything that I read. I'm going to have to listen back. Like most of the time when I'm reading live, I actually comprehend what I'm reading. I comprehended a lot of this, but there's a lot that I didn't. It was just like so much to think about. So I'm looking forward to listening back. So yeah, I hope you guys have wonderful weekends, wonderful sleeps ahead of you, wonderful risings into the new days, and do it like you feel it. So yeah, mwah. Until next time, I'll see you then. Thank you. Thank you. I love yous.